listener production.
Hi, Natasha Belling with you and welcome to the afternoon edition of The Briefing. Coming up in our deep dive, they were one of the most loved up Aussie couples taking Hollywood by storm, Hugh Jackman and Deborra-Lee Furness. Their shock split almost 2 years ago, taking many by surprise. But now another shock development. A revealing social media post this week by Deborra-Lee has the entertainment world buzzing about what really went down in their now seemingly bitter divorce. Entertainment reporter Richard Reid joins us with all the latest. But first, let's check the afternoon headlines this Friday, the 30th of May. Another twist in the ongoing saga with Donald Trump's Liberation Day tariffs, just a day after a number of them were deemed illegal by the Court of International Trade. Now the US Appeal Court has reinstated them. Meantime, the US president has hit out at three of the US judges from the court who blocked his tariffs, calling the decision horrific and threatening, adding, quote, backroom hustlers must not be able to destroy our nation. The Federal Health Minister is issuing a warning about a highly contagious new COVID variant. The new subvariant, called NB 1.8.1, is spreading across a number of states and territories here in Australia and has also led to hospitalisations in Hong Kong, China and also the US. Mark Butler telling the ABC Australians need to make sure they're up to date with their COVID boosters, especially with winter officially starting this weekend.
This is another member of the big sprawling Omicron family, and this is pretty consistent with patterns we've seen now for a few years, where a new subvariant of Omicron emerges and starts to spread across the world.
And Pauline Hanson's One Nation party has nabbed a fourth Senate seat, doubling its representation in the next parliament. The election result means the party will have the same representation as the Nationals in the upper house. Senator Hanson spoke with Sky News earlier today.
To have achieved this, and plus other state members of parliament, I'm elated. But the big thank you must go to the people out there who voted for One Nation, put their trust and confidence into us to give us that opportunity to hold the government to account on your behalf. So to the voters, thank you.
Now it's time to get into our deep dive on the shock divorce drama between Hugh Jackman and Deborra-Lee Furness.
Hugh Jackman's ex seemingly confirms the rumours he cheated as she files for divorce.
Deborra-Lee Furness has taken a swipe at her ex-husband Hugh Jackman after confirming she's filing for divorce.
Almost 2 years since they separated, Deborra-Lee officially filed for divorce this week, but it was her shock social media post that has everyone talking. The 69-year-old saying, quote, my heart and compassion goes out to everyone who has traversed the traumatic journey of betrayal. It's a profound wound that cuts deep. And then Hugh Jackman, who is now in a new relationship with fellow actor Sutton Forrest, then seemed to fire back with his own interesting social media post.
Hugh Jackman's marriage bust-up has taken another twist, with the actor appearing to take a pot shot at his estranged wife. He posted a clip showing him skipping along to the NSYNC tune Bye Bye Bye, and the lyrics have been lost on no one. The caption read, finally, in all caps.
The usually private and rock-solid couple now at the centre of a show business storm that's making headlines around the world. So, what happened? Entertainment reporter Richard Reid joins us with his analysis. Richard, thanks so much for joining us. What an extraordinary roller coaster week. What are your thoughts about what's played out?
Well, I gotta say, I'll first say whenever I see you, a big mischievous smile comes to my face. And when it comes to Hugh Jackman and Deborra-Lee Furness, you have to agree. It's a little bit like she said, and then he replied. That's what I think. Well, of course, it's this bombshell statement that she released that really has everybody talking. Allegedly, she filed officially for divorce. Finally, after 2 years of separation, and all of a sudden, a week later, she just blurbs out this blanket-wide media statement talking about the trauma of betrayal. A higher power will see us through this. Looking for love in other people. No, the power of love is within this. None of it is personal. However, I know what it's like to be betrayed, and my heart is with you all. Okay, you're like, okay, have you found the Lord or something? What's going on? So she releases this. She does not mention Hugh Jackman by name at all. And then, what is it? Maybe 10, 12 hours later, Hugh Jackman releases to his Instagram a joyous picture of him skip roping to Bye Bye Bye, the NSYNC song. And then underneath that, it says in capital letters, finally.
So what are your thoughts on that? I mean, let's be honest,
What are
Richie.
my thoughts on that? Listen to you and the tone of your voice. What are your thoughts? You know my thoughts on that. At first, I was like, oh, coincidental. Hugh Jackman is the nicest guy in Hollywood. Well, you know what stood in the way of the divorce and why 2 years after being separated, it all comes down to money, honey. That's right. You know, when they met back in 1995, you remember this. Deborah was the big star, the huge star. And Hugh was like, he was guesting or maybe had a small role on Corelli. And that's when they fell in love. It wasn't until 5 years later that Hugh Jackman exploded with X-Men. And all of a sudden, he became one of the most in-demand leading men and one of the highest paid actors in Hollywood. So positions changed. And so when it came down to separating their assets, there was no prenup from what I've been told. And it was really a matter of what Deborah thought she deserved in this divorce financially. And they finally hammered it out. But that doesn't mean to say there aren't some bad feelings here. What do you think?
Well, I mean, Richard, it's interesting you mentioned that because there has been some criticism, and I fully agree. Any relationship breaks down and there are children involved here. It is absolutely heartbreaking, and they seem to have a rock-solid marriage of almost 30 years.
Yes.
But it seems the story has certainly been put on the public agenda because Deborra-Lee released this statement.
Yes.
And secondly, Hugh Jackman, I guess, officially launched his new relationship with one of his previous co-stars earlier this year.
Sutton Foster, yes. They'd been in the Music Man starting in 2021. They had a 2-year run to 23. And it was at the end of that run when he and Deborah officially separated. Now, of course, they've been seen holding hands, kissing, canoodling. For all intensive purposes, they are a couple, Sutton Foster and Hugh Jackman. So maybe Deborah didn't see things all so friendly the way Hugh Jackman seems to be seeing it. And remember when they separated, that they released one of those statements,
Yes.
relationships come into our lives, they have a season, they end, blobbity, 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 we're so grateful. Well, 2 years later, it's a different story, isn't it?
Now, you've interviewed Hugh Jackman on a number of occasions.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
There seem to have been, and you mentioned rightfully so, that they seem to be quite very together on how they were going to handle their separation, that it was going to be a very private matter.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think has happened? Because I know a lot of people that were really shocked when Deborra-Lee Furness released this statement.
Yes, I, for one, was very shocked because as they handled their separation, you'll agree, it was in a similar way that they handled their marriage and how they portrayed themselves as a loving couple throughout their 30-year marriage, that they were in it together. They were one unit moving, the parts seemed to be moving in unison. They both agreed to agree on what they say they agree on. That's their business. However, for her to break ranks, so to speak, and release this thinly veiled, venomous attack, I believe, onto her husband, onto his new relationship, he who shall not be named in this statement, really, it seems like a woman scorned. That's what it seems to me. And also, it seems like she's had some heavy-duty California therapy or something. My soul, the heart, God, the universe, betrayal. I have found my joy and let go and let God with gratitude. That's some healing kind of talk that you get from a guru. That's what I think. I'm not saying that's mumbo jumbo. We all have our different way to get through things, but it really seems like she's had an epiphany or someone's told her how to feel.
Richard, in regards to the implications for both of them, at this stage, it looks like it's a he said, she said scenario, and certainly that statement being released earlier this week set it off. Do you think it's done and dusted now, or do you think there's more to play out on this front?
Very interesting question. I would say it's played out. But then again, we all thought that it was a separation and a divorce that was going to go quietly and civilized. I would think we've seen it laid to rest because Hugh Jackman, as we know, and Deborah, for all we know, for all she's portrayed herself to be, is a class act. And so for him to even release this little bit of a tidbit, if it is, seems out of character for him. It really does.
Richard Reid, we appreciate you joining us today. Thanks so much.
Oh my God, if I find out anything more, hello.
That was entertainment reporter Richard Reid. And that's it for this episode of the afternoon edition of The Briefing. We'd love you to subscribe or follow us on Instagram at The Briefing Podcast. We'll be back tomorrow with the weekend briefing, and on tomorrow's ep, Antoinette is joined by Lab Muffin Beauty Sciences Dr. Michelle Wong.
I think the beauty industry for a really long time really underestimated how smart their consumers were, and so they just kept pitching it down. And yeah, it turns out people do care. People do want to know stuff behind their products.
I'm Natasha Belling. Thanks for your company.